Hare Srinath Sundar, we're alive.
Namaskara. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Acharya Pavanosmakam Acharyani Cha Bharati Devo Narayana Shrishaha Devi Mangala Devata. So, welcome to all of you who are viewing this series of lectures that we started on the day of Madhvanami. So, currently we're discussing a topic which is the Shishya Parampara of Sri Madhvacharya. Now, for a school of philosophy to be founded by someone is great, but what is important that it has to be represented to suit different times, different knowledge levels, be represented in a language which is understood by everyone, so that it always remains relevant. People are studying it over and over again, assimilating it through a very refined process. Sri Madhwa philosophy, which started in the year 1200, that was the birth year of Sri Madhvacharya, and to this day, a very illustrious lineage has ensured that this school of philosophy is propagated. Now, not only in the Sanskrit language, but other languages like Kannada and Tulu as well. So, in today's session, the agenda we have is to look at the list of disciples and their lives and their works who came after Sri Madhvacharya. Last time we covered three people, three gurus, Sri Jaitirtha, Sri Sripadaraja and Sri Vyasaraja. All three very illustrious gurus who succeeded after Sri Madhvacharya's contemporary Shishyas and then propagated the philosophy after that. So at the end of today's session, I will show you the chronology of all the gurus that we are going to be covering. While we get to know some nuggets about their biography and the kind of work that they have done, I think a few lessons are something that will endure in our minds, which stand the test of time. One thing which I have found is that many of these gurus have actually faced the same set of challenges that we have in our lives, in their lives. But they have been able to find a spiritual solution, a philosophical solution to those problems, and ensure that those problems do not affect them, do not affect their journey, and they emerge triumphant from those challenges. And they have shown us, therefore, the path about how we should overcome the challenges that we have. What is the right direction? What is the purpose of our life? Why do we even live? And at the end of our lives, what is that picture of success that all of us can see? So it's with that idea that we get started on the next series of gurus. So in the first session, we had looked at all his contemporary disciples, that means disciples who were his contemporaries. And in the last session, we covered Sri Jaitirtharu, Sripadaraja, and then Vyasaraja. Now, in this session, we're going to be looking at four gurus. Sri Vadaraja Tirtharu, Sri Vijayendra Tirtharu, Sri Raghotama Tirtharu, and of course, the world famous Sri Raghavendra Swamigal, on whom the New England Sri Raghavendra Swami Brindavana organization itself is founded. Now, you will appreciate that within the limited time that we have, it is indeed impossible for us to cover everything that happened in their lives, everything that they wrote, and the big lessons that they gave us. But in the limited time that's available, we will see an overview of their lives and their works, and upon further opportunities that we get to interact, we will go into their lives and works in greater detail at a later date. But let's dive deep into one of the gurus' biography. But look at this, So the people that we covered earlier, Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Jaitirtha, and Sri Vyasaraja, all three of them are called Munitrayas. So basically, the idea was that their contribution to the Dvaita philosophy is stellar. That is why they were called Munitraya. And why is that? Is something that we will see at the last slide of this presentation. But here is what this shloka says Sri Madhvakalpavrukshastu Jayaryaha Kamadhrik Sprataha Chintamanistu Vyasaryaha Munitrayam Udahrutam. So it says that all these three people have made stellar contribution, and therefore they are called Munitrayam. That means they are people who have given something which is absolutely unforgettable in the philosophical world of Dvaita. So after Sri Vyasaraja came two of his very, very illustrious Shishyas, and that parampara continued further as well to cover Sri Raghavendra Swamiji as well. Sri Raghottama Tirtharu came in the lineage of Sri Uttaradi Matha, and he had something very unique in his life, and we will see nuggets of that as well. So what we are seeing today is nothing but a lineage of Sri Vyasaraja, which propagated further after his times. So let us look at a very illustrious curriculum vitae or resume, as you may call it, of one of those gurus. Something which is absolutely stunning. So this guru lived for 120 long years. It is a rare, very, very rare scenario. Out of 120 years, he lived 112 years as a sannyasi. Imagine 120 years of life, active life. There is evidence to prove that he was walking around very, very actively, composing great granthas, and even composed several Devarnamas in the last days before he entered the Vrindavana when he was alive. Sasharira Vrindavana Pravesha. Who is that guru whose kriti, whose poem actually won the prize for the best Sanskrit poetry ever? Did we even know that one of our gurus was indeed a world beater in the world of Sanskrit poetry, where the competition for poetry is intense? The language, the Sanskrit language, lends itself very well to poetry, and you can imagine the competition and the intensity with which this was fought. And Sri Vyasara, and the Guru actually won it hands down. Who wrote the world's first spiritual travelogue? We all are aware of travelogues. Whenever people travel, they post pictures and write something about the places that they visited. But this guru traveled all over India, covering all the famous pilgrimages, documenting that place in a beautiful grantha. So who is that guru who wrote the world's first travelogue? And who wrote a shloka that sounds like the tapping of a horse? So when you hear the shloka, it sounds like a horse is running. And why running of a horse? Curious, right? That is the greatness of this guru. And lastly, who invented a dessert, a sweet, which has God's name in it? Yes, by now I'm sure all of you would have guessed it. We are indeed talking about none other than Sri Vadaraja Tirtha Sri Bengaluru. So the story of Sri Vadaraja itself is very, very, very interesting. His parents, Sri Ramacharya and Sri Gauri Devi, were people who stayed in a place called Kumbhashi. Kumbhashi is a small town a little away from Udupi. And the matha at that time, the 8 mathas that Sri Madhvacharya had founded, was actually called, one of them was called Kumbhashi Matha. This matha is today known as Sri Sode Vadiraja Matha. So the Kumbhashi Matha was situated in the small town of Kumbhashi, and Sri Vagisha Tirtha was the presiding pontiff at that point in time. The Ramacharya couple went to him one day and prayed that they did not have children, and he should bless them with a child. Sri Vagisha Tirtha said, yes, you will have a child, but the condition is that you will have to give it, or you will have to let the child be my disciple, and he will continue his spiritual life as a monk. To which the couple was obviously a little disappointed, because while they were very happy that they will get a child, they will have to give away the child at a young age, and the child will lead a very tough, very disciplined life of an ascetic, which is not easy at all. So Sri Vagisha Tirtha then saw that it was a bit of a disappointment was written on the faces of the Ramacharya couple, and then he told them that, okay, let us have some terms and conditions. If the child is born within the house, you may keep it, but if the child is born outside the house, then of course the child will have to be handed over to us. The couple immediately agreed. The thought in their mind was that it is not easy to not to go outside the house. We are all facing COVID lockdown, so we know that it is difficult, but with a little bit of an effort, for the sake of safety, we all remain within our houses. So the couple decided that yes, that would be something that they can easily do. So soon, Gauri Devi conceived, and from that day onwards, Sri Ramacharya would never allow her to go outside the house, lest the child is born outside the house. Now, we all know that the child would have been born 9 months later, but still, the couple and everybody around them ensured that she never actually went outside the house. The months rolled by, and finally, it was time for her to deliver a baby, and the days were nearby when she would actually deliver the baby. At that point in time, something startling happened. It was the day of Sadhana Dwadashi. Dwadashi is the 12th day of the fortnight, as we know, and on that day, people would partake food early in the morning because they would have fasted on the day of the Ekadashi. They performing the Ekadashi Vrata, where they would be on complete fast, and next day early morning they have their food. So this was one such occasion, and Sri Ramacharya was having his food, and the lady, since she was pregnant, she was actually seated at some distance, overlooking the big fields, the paddy fields that were there in front of the house. And just then she saw that all the paddy had been harvested, and it was lying at the middle of that field. Now, if you look at the chronology, it's so logical and so correct, so accurate. Sri Vadaraja Aradhana and the birth happened at around this time of the year, and that's a few weeks after the harvest season as well. So it's all very, very logical, very analytical, and very accurate. And something startling happened. A cow suddenly entered that place and started to eat the harvest. As an instinct, the lady of the house, Gauri Devi, got up and started to shoo the cow away. And at that point in time, when she stepped outside the house and went into the fields, the baby got delivered. So she delivered the baby on while she was just seated right in the middle of the paddy field. And what should happen at that point in time? There were a group of women who were waiting outside the farm to enter that place with this golden plate, so that the child would actually be delivered on that golden plate and not touch the floor or the earth. The child being born and touching the earth meant that the child would probably have very materialistic and worldly desires. But a child which is delivered on a golden plate would be a child which will be above gold, which will be above materialistic aspirations, and indeed lead a very, very spiritually focused and purposeful life. So that was divine will. Now it was Shivagisha Tirtha's way of communicating to the couple that it was not his will, but it was God's will that their child indeed is born outside the house, meaning the child does not belong to the house or one household, but belongs to the world. And thus was born Shivadaraja Tirtha. The photos that you see are the temple where Shivadaraja was born. Now it has been made into a small temple as a mark of respect for his mother. The place is also called Gauri Gadde. It is very close to the Kumbashi temple, the Anegundi Ganesha temple. So if you visit Udupi, please do visit both the Ganesha temple as well as this beautiful place. It's in the middle of a field even now, and absolutely enchanting to go there. Sri Vadaraja's idol has been established there, and people go and pray there for long times. So that is the birth. Sri Ramacharya Gauri Devi, as I said, and the child was named Bhuvaraha. So we had earlier seen that Sri Madhvacharya had founded 8 mathas, and each of the mathas he had gifted one idol of Sri Vishnu. The idol of Sri Vishnu given to Sri Vadaraja Matha, or those days called the Kumashi Matha, is Bhuvaraha. So the child was named Bhuvaraha by Sri Vagisha Tirtha because as a sign that the child one day will indeed be the Pithadipati and have the idea and already has the identity. Now, after the child turned 5 years, Upanayanam, or the the thread ceremony performed to Brahmin boys was performed, and at the young age of 8 years, he was given the sannyasa diksha. Now, before this, Sri Vagisha Tirtha ensured that indeed he was clear in his mind that the child had the necessary qualities to be a sannyasi. And what is the biggest quality that a person needs to be a sannyasi is a sense of detachment towards worldly areas, and also a focus towards the Shastras. So many times we hear the word Vairagya. Vairagya, many people think is about detachment. It is almost said that it sounds like a state of depression. It is not depression at all. On the contrary, what it means is that once you have developed a taste for one aspect, your interest on other aspect actually decreases. So, for example, somebody is deeply interested in sports. He's bound to watch more sports, play more sports, read more about sports than other areas. You ask him to read something about the stock market, he may not be interested. So when we say that, so we say the person is detached about other areas, mainly because he's very attached to one area. Sri Vadiraja or Sri Bhuvaraha showed those qualities when he was put in situations where he had to. Sri Vagisha Tirtha tried to tempt him by putting a lot of dry fruits in front of him and seeing whether he would eat it. He refused to eat it, saying that the Hari Naivedya has not been performed and he would not eat that food. Whereas other boys who were there in the Gurukula ran and ate that fruit out of temptation. Nothing to spoil or nothing to blame those boys, but just that Sri Vadiraja proved that he was indeed worthy to be a sannyasi. That is when the illustrious life of Sri Bhuvaraha as Sri Vadiraja then moved on. Of course, as I said, it's a 120-year biography of Sri Vadiraja. Even if one were to pick up a few incidents, it will still be running into several pages. So we will pick up some things in his life which really stand out as something extremely special, and at a later date have an opportunity to get deep dive into his life. One of his greatest kritis is Sri Rukmini Vijaya. So what had happened was Madhvacharya started to tour the different pilgrimages in India. Now those days it was very difficult to travel because there were no roads, there were no modes of transport other than horse riding. There were no bridges, so you had to cross the rivers by almost on the feet all the time. If it rains very heavily, they could not travel, and very importantly, they were very open to attacks. Those days, India was not one country; it was several kingdoms. Each of them were at loggerheads with each other. So, law and order situation was not the best in those days. So, in that scenario, Sri Vadiraja started to travel and reach a city called Punyanagari, which is modern day Pune. And Pune at those days was a big center of knowledge, a big center of education. And there was a world global conference on poetry going on, where they were all debating, a bunch of scholars coming from different parts of the world, but debating which is the best poetry in Sanskrit. So it is always said that so there were 5 poems which were shortlisted: Kumara Sambhava and Raghuvamsha by Kalidasa, Kirat Arjuniya by Bharavi, Naisajiya Charita by Sriharsha, and Shishupala by Magha. So all these 5 were in contention, and there was voting going on about which will be the best. And after very thorough debates, they decided that the Sarvashrestha superior Mahakavya was the Shishupala Vadha by Magha. That was what was the decision. And they were about to announce that and take the poetry on an elephant and take it around as a mark of respect. Sri Vadaraja came there and he learned about this competition. And to him, there were certain things that he probably did not appreciate. One, he didn't like the title, Shishupala Vadha. That means the killing of someone. He said, how can the title of something be a little negative in terms of killing? Yeah, Shishupala was never, no doubt, a demon. But why did we have to say Vadha? Can't it be something which is positive? And he read through the poetry. Now, Shishupala Vadha by Magha is one of the greatest poetries. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But there were a few shortcomings. One, from Sri Vadaraja's point of view, it did not have any spiritual content. Though it was the story of Sri Krishna and Sri Rukmini's marriage, it did not have any spiritual part of it. Second, the poetry seems to have been written in order to compete with other works which were there. Like Bharavi's work, it is very evident that a lot of things that were there were made to compete against Bharavi. And lastly, the Mahakavya, whatever you call as Mahakavya, actually has certain characteristics. So when you call a Kavya as Mahakavya, there are certain characteristics and some rules which are established. Like you have to describe, for example, Chandrodaya, Chandravasta, that means the rise of the moon, the setting of the moon, the description of different seasons has to be done, and so on. So while these were found in Magha's poetry, what was missing was that it sounded very artificial. Somebody had added just to make it sound or look like a Mahakavya. It was more like a tick box rather than a natural flow. Now, this aspect has been appreciated even to this day. There are articles which are, of course, available on the net that you can research into about what were the shortcomings of Magha's Shishupala Vada, which Sri Vadaraja actually overcame. So, Sri Vadaraja said that, look, I think there is a better poetry available than this. But unfortunately, it is not here. It is available in our town of Udupi. And if you allow me, I will get this book from there, and then all of you can have a look at it and then decide which one you would like to award as the best poetry. So he went there, and they all agreed, yes, I think if there is something which can compete, we would definitely like to wait, because this is an opportunity for us to compare and learn about which one was the best. Now, Sri Vadaraja asked somebody to go towards Udupi on a horse and come back after some time. Actually, the fact was that poetry never existed. Sri Vadaraja wrote that poetry in those 19 days, which he said the person going on the horse from Pune to Udupi and back would take about 19 days. There was no such poetry. And having to lead such a cramped life and totally dedicated timetable, he did not have time to write this poetry. So therefore, it seems he wrote this in the time that he would, after the completion of his daily pujas, and by the time he would wrap up all the proceedings and keep all the idols inside the box, Devara Pettike, and in that duration, he actually started writing at the rate of one chapter a day, one canto a day. And he would ask his disciple to take that down and actually complete it. Imagine 19 days, 19 cantos were written, and at the end of 19 days, he actually went and handed over the poetry. And the people who read it were stunned to see how can somebody write with this kind of accuracy, this kind of perfection, meeting all the qualities of Mahakavya so naturally that nothing seems abrupt, nothing seems very deliberated, and nothing seems, very importantly, something which is burdened. A very, very natural style of writing, and very importantly, from Sri Vadaraja's perspective, this propagated the Madhwa philosophy. So he has taken aspects that were available in Bhagavata, several Puranas, and he has got all those things accumulated in the form of a poetry which has to be read to be believed. Even if you do not understand Sanskrit, even if you're not able to understand all the subtleties, just reading Sri Rukmini makes you feel so happy. Each word, each letter, the formation of each sentence, the examples that he gives are something that have to be read to believe. And he conveys very complex aspects in a very, very simple language and in a poetic language. And just to give you one example, when Sri Krishna is born, there is always a debate that why don't we just admit that Sri Krishna was like any other child? The child was born, and it is like any other child. Why do we say Krishna was never born? He was Pradurbhava. That means he appeared. He was not born after being in his mother's womb for 9 months. He doesn't have that because he is Sri Hari, he is Vishnu, and Sri Hari does not have Garbhavasa or being in the mother's womb. The difficulty that one goes through is not something that Sri Vishnu went through when he was born. So, to present this, he tells it in a very interesting way. He said the only people to know whether the child is theirs or not are the mother, 99% of the cases, and 1% is the father. What did these people do when Shri Krishna was born? They did namaskara to the child and fell at the feet of the child. Will any parent do that to the child when they are born? And look at the child. The child was born with 4 hands. Today, if a child is born with 4 hands, people will just run away thinking it's some demon. That was not what Vasudeva and Devaki did. They did namaskara, fully acknowledging that that child indeed was not theirs, and it was indeed Lord. So look at the very nice way in which he brings out social aspects, but to convey a fantastic spiritual message. So Rukminisha Vijaya won the competition hands down, and it was taken all around the city of Pune on the top of an elephant as a mark of respect. And poetry, it is always thought that philosophy and spirituality are boring aspects. Whenever we talk about philosophy, it is supposed to be very abstract and sometimes dry. But Sri Madhvacharya Tirtha proved that indeed you can have it presented in a very, very attractive style, giving beautiful comparisons. And even today, I can safely say that if you want to improve your presentation skills, you should read Sri Madhvacharya's works about how you can make even the simplest story, even the most complex aspects, and convey it in a very interesting way. So that is the story of Sri Rukminisha Vijaya. Today, Rukminisha Vijaya is available everywhere, and it's quite a pity that it's not read as much as it should be. Imagine you go to Boston and don't visit the Harvard University. People will laugh at you and say, why did you go there then? So in the same manner, I think if you have access to such a great spiritual work and we don't get to read it, I think it's a big loss for all of us. So please make an attempt to read it. The Kavya is available with Kannada translations and written by great scholars. So, of course, his Mahima are always there. It's very difficult, as I said, to cover all of them. I will cover some of them which really stand out. So once Sri Madhvacharya was in the middle of so he had visited a city, and there 2 scholars actually challenged him, saying that for a debate, saying that please come, we will have a debate. And Sri Madhvacharya agreed, and he went to the place at a stipulated time, and those 2 people did not show up. The next day also the same thing happened. They promised to come and they did not come. Their idea was that they will keep putting these dates, resetting the time, and but they will never show up. The reason for that is that they will say that it is not possible. Though the idea was that Vadirajuru then decides that to leave the place, and then they would come running and say, see, we were here for a debate and he did not show up. That was their aim. They never really wanted to have the debate. So on one such occasion, Sri Madhvacharya had to go back to Udupi for the Pariyaya time. So he told, he authorized, there was a couple, an elderly couple who came to him and to seek his blessings. He said that, look, these people are going to come to have the debate after I leave. So here is the mantrakshate, or the holy rice from his hand. Keep it in your hand, and I authorize you to have this debate on my behalf. So when these 2 people come, go and have this debate, and if possible, defeat them in that. So Sri Vadarajaru left the place. The moment he left the place, the 2 people came running because that was their idea. And he said, let us, can you please give this to me? And immediately the person there said, I am authorized to actually have the debate. Let's have the debate. Now these people, the 2 scholars who wanted to have the debate, thought that this person is not really that knowledgeable. So it will be easy for them to defeat him. And in turn, it will mean the defeat of Sri Madhvacharya because he has authorized him to have that debate on his behalf. So the debate happened, and what happened, to their surprise, the person who till yesterday could barely speak properly, today was speaking eloquently, and finally the person defeats them in the debate. And as per the terms and condition, they write what is called a Jayapatra, or a line or a letter declaring or admitting that they have indeed lost the debate. So this is the story that happened, and then they went to Udupi. The couple then went to Udupi and fell at the feet of Sri Madhvacharya and thanked him for giving them the opportunity to have the debate, and handed over the letter in which the two people had accepted defeat. So Madhvacharya was very pleased, and he said, because of the service that you have rendered, I would like to grant you a boon. So you can ask for anything you want. So the couple became a little thoughtful. They said, look, Sri Madhvacharya is offering us something. So we should we should not ask something which is random. We should ask something which is very, very special. So they said, can we think about this and come back to you tomorrow? So he said, yes, you can do that. So next day, the couple went back. They told Sri Madhvacharya that we thought all night what we should seek from you. And we are convinced that what we should seek from you is this. Please grant us a child which is as great as you are. Sri Madhvacharya was pleased and immediately granted the boon. But he told them that, look, being like me, exactly like me, means the child will be a sannyasi. Is that okay with you? To which the couple said, yes, Sri Madhvacharya, we are absolutely fine with this condition, because with such a great Gnani like you, such a knowledgeable person, if our child can be anywhere like you, it will be something that we would have given as a gift to the society. So immediately Sri Madhvacharya granted the boon. The child was born and grew up to be none other than the Vidyadesha Tirtha, who ascended the throne, the Samrajya throne of Sri Uttaradimat, one of the greatest scholars of his times, and has addressed some of the most complicated and complex and abstract aspects of Srimad Nyaya Sudha. And what a great scholar he became. Of course, as I said, the list of things that he has done is very, very long, and it is impossible to cover all these aspects. I'll have to skip some of the things that we have put on the agenda. My sincere apologies for that. These stories will have to be narrated at a different time for us to talk about it in detail. But I'd just like to talk about this particular picture that you see right now. All of us are curious. What is this picture? What is the horse doing? So it was a practice for Sri Madhvacharya to take all the Naivedya, food that is available, and keep it on his head. And a horse, who was none other than Hayagriva himself, the horse, the form of Sri Vishnu, the avatar of Vishnu, with a horse face, he would come and he would eat all the food, leaving some for Sri Madhvacharya to eat. That was the routine. So Sri Madhvacharya would take it in a large plate, keep it on his head. The horse will climb onto his shoulder and eat that food. What a great achievement by this guru. Because God, whenever we do Naivedya, it is symbolic. We just offer it to God and take away the food. The God never eats it. But the food which was offered by Sri Madhvacharya was indeed eaten by Sri Hayagriva. So this was the routine that he followed. And at that time, once what happened was that he kept the food on his head, and the horse came and ate away all the food, leaving nothing. So Madhvacharya took it down and saw that there was no food left, and he thought in his mind that maybe God does not want me to eat any food today. And he went hungry the whole day. And to his shock, next day when he woke up and started to do the puja of God, he had an idol of Sri Hayagriva, and the portion in the throat had turned green. He was shocked, how did this happen? And through his divine vision, he could see that somebody had poisoned that food, and the horse had eaten away all the food, so that Madhvacharya does not eat the food and get poisoned in the process. So that was Lord Hayagriva's ways of showing how he protects his disciples and his bhaktas and his devotees. And even to this day, when you visit the Sode Vadiraja Mata Samsthana Puja, that means the puja which is done by Sri Vadirajaru to the current pontiff, you will see that there is a green line on the throat of Sri Hayagriva Murti which is kept there. It is a standing as a testimony even today that such a beautiful idol has a green line indicating that somebody had tried to poison this. So this picture is that of Sri Vadiraja offering that Naivedya and Sri Hayagriva accepting it himself. So that is the story of Sri Vadiraja Tirtha's um, life. Again, there were several things that one can go on and on. There are two interesting things. He founded a sweet and named it Hayagriva. It's one of the most delicious sweets. I'm sure all of you would have eaten it. It is full of a lot of nutritional qualities as well because it's thick with pulses and with a lot of very rich ingredients it is made. And he named it Hayagriva because he wanted that in every aspect around us, in everything around us, we think about Hayagriva, we think about God. And that's why he named it Hayagriva. So if you go to an event where Hayagriva has been made as a dessert, then people will say, do you want Hayagriva? Do you want Hayagriva? Hayagriva beka, beka. Even they will talk like that. And immediately the people who want will say, okay, please serve me Hayagriva. Again, they will take God's name. So like this, people in one festival or one event, the word Hayagriva, the name Hayagriva, therefore, will be taken several times. So that is the beauty of this sweet. Again, when you look at the other thing he founded was something called Gulla. It is grown again in a small village called Mattu, a little away from Udupi. So he founded that a very delicious vegetable, and he offered that to Sri Hayagriva every day. So Vadiraja, yeah, we can move. So he lived in the world for 120 years and finally entered the Vrindavana in the Sode Kshetra, as we know. It's one of the most enchanting places that one can think of, even now, with all the natural beauty as well as the complete solitude that exists even today. That place was called Hayashira Guha. That means that is the place where Sri Hayagriva had performed the meditation on the tapas in that place, as it's recounted in the Pauranika Granthas. So that is where it is, and there's a beautiful idol, there's a beautiful temple of Sri Trivikrama Devaru, which is there, and on a little away from that is the Moola Vrindavana of Sri Vadirajaru. I will talk to you a little bit about the Vrindavana itself. Many people have these questions. Yeah, so here the Pancha, so if you go to Sode and you will see Pancha Vrindavana, there are 5 Vrindavanas, and one gets a feeling that the one in the middle is that of Vadiraja and other must be of other pontiffs. No, that is not the case. This Pancha Vrindavana is like this. In the middle is the Vadiraja Vrindavana. The one in the center is absolutely the biggest, it's very visible. That is the Vrindavana of Sri Vadiraja. Around that are 4 more Vrindavanas. Each of them are carved with the different forms of God. So the one in southeast is got Matsya and Kurma Varaha, and the one with southwest has Narasimha and Vamana, and northwest has Parshurama and Rama, and the one in northeast has Krishna, Buddha, and Kalki. So these are different forms of God. There is no sannyasis body inside that. The only one which is in the middle, the tomb or that samadhi, is that of Sri Vadiraja. It faces, you can see a picture on top, that is of Sri Vedavyasa, which is in front of it. So he always is facing Sri Vedavyasa. Again, an indication that he is indeed always praying to God. Imagine he entered the Vrindavana, Sasharira Vrindavana. That means he entered it fully alive, fully conscious, and as per his will. So that is the greatness of Sri Vadirajaru. 120 illustrious years, many works. I think it's hard for us to even reproduce the list of the great granthas he has written. He has ticked all the boxes. He has addressed all the topics of philosophical world. And there is another name for Sri Vadirajaru, which is stotras. So it has almost become by default that if you look at a stotra, it must have been written in by Sri Madhwacharya. It has become so synonymous because he has got a lot of works that are there. Fantastic, prolific writer, someone whose works, if you read it once, it's hard to get it out of your mind because of his illustrious ways in which he writes. So let us make an attempt. In fact, many people who want to start the studies of Madhvacharya are always advised to read Sri Vadaraja's works because they're very attractive in their presentation, very simplified, at the same time convey the entirety of Sri Madhvacharya's philosophy in a beautiful way. And the other signature of his is that even if one reads a small shloka, 1/4 of a shloka, you can make out that it is written by Sri Madhvacharya because of his signature style. It is very easy to catch it. So Dashavatara Stuti. I told you that it is like a tapping of a horse. So it says, Proshthi Shavigraha Sunishthi Vanodhata Vishishtambuchari Jalade Posthantara Hita Vicheshtha Gamoga Parameshthi Ditatva Mavamam. So everywhere he repeats that words like a tapping of a horse. So if you talk about it fast, it comes out beautifully. Palaya Juta Palaya Jita Palaya Kamalalaya Leelaya Dhrita Bhudaram Buruhodara Svajanodara. So everywhere the word laya 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 repeats. So it is very easy to memorize it. At the same time, it lends itself to beautiful rendition. So that is the greatness of Sri Vadaraja. So we have very limited time, so I'll have to go a little fast. Also, I think with Sujit's permission, now that we are running really short of time, with all your permission, is it fine that I do not cover the life of Sri Raghavendra Swamiji? I know all of you would have been looking forward to it, but given the paucity of time, we may have to close it with just Raghotama Tirtharu, and we will look at a later date on which we can go ahead with the Sri Raghavendra Swamiji's life and works. If that is fine with you, then I would like to do that instead of rushing through their life. So I'll wait for Sujit and other organizers to to respond whether that is okay, or we'll have to extend the session if that is what we would like to do. So Vijayendra Tirtha came again. He was a disciple of Sri Vyasaraja, Vadiraja, and Sri Vijayendra. Both of them are disciples of Sri Vyasaraja, and Vijayendra is supposed to have studied the Sarvamula Granthas from Sri Vyasaraja 6 times and Srimad Nyaya Sudha 9 times. Imagine studying it even once is a great achievement, but imagine covering it so many times. Why? The answer is in the depth of Sri Madhwa philosophy itself. So Sri Vijayendra was studying under Sri Vyasaraja in the Vishwapavana Matha. You can see the picture on top. That is the multidisciplinary university which is there in Hampi, and he was a student of Sri Vyasaraja. His name originally was Sri Vishnu Tirtha. Before he moved to the Surendra Tirtha Matha, he was actually called Sri Vishnu Tirtha, a person of great knowledge and was able to digest all the knowledge that Sri Vyasaraja had given him, internalized it, assimilated very well. And then Surendra Tirtha, belonging to another Matha, visited Sri Vyasaraja in Hampi and requested him to hand over Sri Vishnu Tirtha as his disciple. Why? Because he wanted to take him down south into Kumbakonam and other surrounding areas where lots of other people, other forms of philosophy were misguiding the people. So he requested Sri Vyasaraja to indeed hand over that to him, and immediately, without batting an eyelid, Sri Vyasaraja handed over Sri Vishnu Tirtha to Surendra Tirtha and said, yes, he's going to be your disciple and he's going to be a part of continued your lineage. What a supreme sacrifice. That is something which stands out in the lives of all our gurus, especially Sri Vyasaraja. And Sri Vishnu Tirtha then was rechristened as Sri Vijayendra Tirtha. His Vrindavana is in Kumbakonam. Now, the thing to remember about Sri Vijayendra Tirtha is that he composed the maximum number of kritis or maximum number of granthas in his life. He composed 104 kritis, which are documented. And fortunately for us, we have number of these granthas available even today. They address different forms of philosophy, and his Vrindavana is there in Kumbakonam. I'll just tell one story. And if you go to visit Kumbakonam, which you should, there is a Kumbeshwara temple. The temple of Sri Kumbeshwara, that is Lord Shiva, and Goddess Parvati, which is Mangalambika. That's the name of the goddess there. So he went to visit every day. Sri Vijayendra would go to this temple, and he would grind the sandalwood to get the sandalwood paste. And while doing so continuously for several days, he didn't realize that his finger had got worn out. And in fact, he did not have one finger because he was constantly making that paste every day and offering it to Goddess Parvati. Now, one of his fingers just went away, got sort of burnt out over a period of time. And look at what Goddess Parvati did. She said, if my bhakta, my devotee, does not have that finger, I also don't want that finger. And she gave up that finger. So today, if you visit the temple, of course they have put a covering, and it's a kavacha. But when you request the priest to take off the kavacha, and if they do that, you'll see that the goddess still does not have a finger. And that place where he sat and ground that paste is seen even today. They've put a brass plate to identify that. Such was the greatness of Sri Vijayendra Tirtha. Vijayendra Tirtha's disciple was Sudhindra Tirtha, and Sudhindra Tirtha's Shishya was none other than Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. So that is the illustrious lineage. Vijayendra Karab Jyotha, Sudhindra Varaputrakaha. That is what we say during Raghavendra Stotra. And the Vrindavana stands tall in the city of Kumbakonam amidst so many temples, and you can visit it. The other aspect of Sri Vijayendra was that he was Chaturshashta Kala Kovida. That means he knew 64 different forms of art, and one of that was making idols. So these idols that you see here have all been made by none other than Sri Vijayendra Tirtha himself. These are available. You can see it in Kumbakonam when you visit. And what you will observe is the finesse with which these idols have been crafted, and it is so natural. It is not a stoic pose that you see the gods. It is a pose in which, as though somebody is really seated on a beautiful chariot, and all the other forms. So please make it a point to go to Kumbakonam during your next visit. Visit this place and request them to show these idols. They are absolutely beautiful, and they have been preserved in the Matha. So Sri Vijayendra Tirtha's Vrindavana, as I said, is in Kumbakonam. The next story is that of Sri Raghottama Tirtha. Raghottama Tirtha comes in the illustrious lineage of the Uttaradimat, and one of the greatest scholars of our times. So the way we have chosen the gurus, there are lots of other gurus, many gurus, and their contribution to taking forward the Dvaita philosophy cannot be undermined. However, we had to pick up those who have had a big impact on keeping the lineage intact, as well as making big contributions to Madhva Shastra, while the others propagated it equally well. Many of them have not composed great kritis, or we are not aware of that. And of course, the most importantly, the positive time that we have, we cannot cover everybody's lives. But we wanted to pick up those who have made a seminal contribution to the Dvaita philosophy. So one such guru was Sri Raghottama Tirtha. Again, somebody whose story is fantastic. He was a Shishya of Sri Raghuvarya Tirtha. And what happened was that Raghuvarya Tirtha gave the Sannyasa Diksha to Raghottama Tirtha. Again, an important point to note that after Sri Raghottama Tirtha, he was a Bala Sannyasi, which is a rarity in the Uttaradhimat tradition. There are very few people who came with the sannyasi who were Bala Sannyasi. That means they were ordained as sannyasi before getting married. Most of them got married and subsequently became sannyasis. But Sri Raghottama Tirtha is an exception to that. And after that, the current pontiff, Sri Satyatma Tirtha, is the next person to have been ordained as sannyasi when he was also a Bala Sannyasi. That means when he was also not married. So after a long gap, we are seeing that that tradition sort of repeat itself. But the story about Sri Raghuvarya Tirtha was that he ordained him into as a Pitadipati and immediately entered the Vrindavana. He passed away and leaving the young boy with no ways and no ability to learn. So he started learning the Nyaya Sudha under the tutelage of a scholar. Now slowly the scholar became very, very arrogant because he said, look, I'm teaching the Pitadipati himself. And he would make it tough for Sri Raghuttama Tirtha to get that education. So one day, it was a Dwadashi day, and he was invited to a person's house, a devotee's house, to have his parna or his puja, and then subsequently have the meal. And when Sri Raghuttama Tirtha went there, to his shock, he saw that everybody there had indeed started to eat, leaving him behind, and completely ignoring the fact that he was a Pitadipati and had to be served the food first. Very disappointed, he came back to the matha, and then he pondered, and with great disappointment and sorrow in his mind, he slept. In the dreams, his guru, Sri Raghuvarya Tirtha, appeared. It is said that God appeared in the form of Raghuvarya Tirtha and said that, look, what is not, you will not be dependent on anybody else for knowledge. You will be, you become knowledgeable overnight. So the entire scriptural knowledge that would have taken maybe decades for Raghuttama Tirtha to actually acquire, he got it in one instant. And he woke up in the morning with a complete knowledge and complete authority on Nyaya Sudha. Again, an unparalleled achievement. Now, the scholar who was teaching him soon realized his folly, fell at his feet. So, Sri Raghuttama Tirtha not only did that to himself, but also gave that knowledge to others in that in an instant form. So, there is a very interesting story of Rotti Venkatadri Bhatta, one of his persons of his entourage, who would actually make the roti or the chapati, which is made in the North Karnataka. It's made out of jowar. So that he would make that roti for the Naivedya every day. And one day he came crying to Sri Raghuttama Tirtha and said, look, Raghuttama Tirtha, you are such a great guru. So many people are coming and learning the Madhva Shastra from you. And look at me, I'm right next to you, but I do not get any knowledge. And all my life, I'm just cooking. I'm not doing anything more. So isn't it a loss for me that I'm so close to you, so close to the seat of knowledge, but not having any access to that knowledge? Sri Raghuttama Tirtha understood his dilemma, immediately picked up the sacred rice or mantrakshata, handed it over to him and said, do not worry, you will get the scholarship instantly. Please come and join my class tomorrow, and immediately you will start learning, and all the stuff that you would have studied before it, you would have that knowledge would come to you in an instant. Rotti Acharya was very, very worried and very, very skeptical. So he went there, but he had full confidence on his guru. He went there, sat down, and to his surprise, he was able to relate and understand everything that Sri Raghuttama Tirtha was talking about, Srimad Nyaya Sudha, which is again a very abstract grantha, and he understood that in an instant. Now, Sri Rotti Venkatadri Bhatta grew to such a stature as a scholar that his works are quoted by none other than Sri Raghavendra Swamiji himself in his works. And as a mark of respect to whatever he did, which was making that roti, the family name itself is Roti. That family exists even today, and they have still retained the surname Roti because they believe that it is that Roti which got them proximity to God and to such a great guru like Raghuttama Tirtha. Again, as I said, the stories and the Mahimas are such great that one cannot cover it in a short period of time. So this is the life of Sri Raghuttama Tirtha. Fantastic contributor. All his kritis are called Bhava Bodha. So he titles all the kritis as Bhava Bodha. That means the texts which actually explain the bhava or the meaning of what the other gurus before him have actually talked about. So he elaborates. He's a prolific writer. He's written elaborate texts about different aspects of scriptures, covering most of Sri Jaitirtha's Tika Granthas. So that is the story of Sri Raghotama Tirtha. Even now, hundreds of people visit that every single day to pray to Sri Raghotama Tirtha and obtain his blessings. And last, and definitely not the least, is our favorite Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. Again, as I said, uh, one reason I'm not covering his life in detail is that his life probably is very well known to most people. I would just like to talk about just two incidents. One was the debate or the discussion. It's a very unique debate. Probably you've never heard about such a debate before. So, what the story goes like this: Sri Sudhindra Tirtha was the guru of Sri Raghavendra Swamiji, as we know. Vijayendra Karabjyota, Sudhindra Varaputraka. He was ordained as a sannyasi and made the Pitadipati by Sri Sudhindra Tirtha. But before Sri Raghavendra Swamiji, he had ordained some, one more pontiff, one more sannyasi as Yadavendra, Sri Yadavendra Tirtha. And he was a Bidi sannyasi, that means not attached to a mutt as a Pitadipati, but he would go one to several places and propagate the Madhvacharya. Again, a great scholar. And suddenly, when Sri Sudhindra Tirtha attained the Vrindavanam, his Vrindavana is in Nava Vrindavana, there were some people on miscreants and rumor mongers. So what they did was they came to Yadavendra and said that probably Sri Sudhindra Tirtha, who was the guru, actually probably wanted you to be the Pitadipati and succeed him. So, yeah, and Sri Raghavendra Swamiji has taken away all the control of the Matha. So why don't you go and stake your claim? It should be you who is doing it. Now, Yadavendra was in a dilemma. On one hand, he was the senior pontiff, and he wondered if Sudhindra Tirtha wanted him to be the sannyasi. Those were not days of excellent communication. So there was no way in which one could verify these things. So he decided to come and talk to Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. And so everybody was expecting a big showdown between the two of them, and both of them will actually fight. And there will be a fierce battle which will go on, and there will be arguments and shouting and everything. So both the pontiffs came. The moment Sri Raghavendra Swamiji saw Yadavendra, he did namaskaram to him and said, "Now, I was just waiting for you to come. Now that you have come, please take over the Matha, and you should be the person who should be running the administration of the Matha." Immediately, Yadavendra realized that Sri Raghavendra Swamiji had absolutely no intention to usurp something that should have belonged to him. And he said, "No, it is very clear in my mind that Sri Sudhindra Tirtha indeed wanted you, that is Sri Raghavendra Swami, to succeed him. That is, otherwise he would have told me." And of course, there was a debate between the two of them, and there was an argument. But in the reverse order, it was both of them saying that the other person should take over the Pitadipati. And finally, the king had to intervene. And they brought in the king to do an arbitration. And what did the king say? King said, "Both of you are such illustrious gurus. I'm sure you will find a way out. And I cannot interfere when I'm amidst such great people." So all of them agreed on one thing, that Yadavendra was the senior person and Raghavendra was junior. So therefore, Yadavendra will decide what should be done. And they left it to his discretion. To which Yadavendra said something which is worth its weight in gold. And look at how great people actually resolve the differences that they have between them. Sri Yadavendra said that my name is Yadavendra, meaning Krishna, whereas your name is Raghavendra, that means it is Rama's name. Who ascended the throne, who became the king, is Rama, not Krishna. So therefore, it is you who should be the Pitadipati. And since you have already agreed that you will accept whatever I say, here is my decision. To which Raghavendra Swamiji, in all his humility, accepted it. That is the greatness, and that is the way in which great men resolve differences. Not by fighting, going to the court, and making a public gamble of all these things, but by looking at what is the spiritual message that exists by which they can be guided to take the next steps. Of course, I will conclude with one more small piece about Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. Sri Raghavendra Swamiji once visited a small house of a great scholar. His name was Bidarahalli Srinivasacharya. He and his wife would stay in a small, almost like a hut. And one day, the lady of the house found somebody knocking at the door. She opened the door, and whom should she find? Sri Raghavendra Swami himself. She welcomed him into the house and said, "My husband has gone to the river to take a bath. I will go and fetch him immediately." She went there, and when she had gone there, Sri Raghavendra Swamiji was going around the small hut looking at what all was kept there. And to his astonishment, he found a great tech grantha being written by Srinivasacharya. So the couple came back after some time, and both of them fell at Sri Raghavendra Swamiji's feet. Imagine when we do the Pada Puja of Sri Raghavendra Swamiji today, we feel so blessed. Imagine Sri Raghavendra Swamiji himself standing in front of us. And the couple fell at his feet. And Sri Raghavendra Swamiji asked him a question. He said, "Srinivasacharya, this text that you have written is fantastic, but it has got two handwritings. The two people seem to have written it. What is this, and how can two people be writing it?" To which Srinivasacharya responded by saying, "Sri Raghavendra Guruji, this is my wife and I constantly have discussions on philosophical topics. So if there is something which I have started to write, I just leave some gaps where things can be filled in by someone else. And she, in her spare time, goes and actually completes that whole text." Imagine the scholarship that Srinivasacharya and his wife had, which was recognized by Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. And very importantly, Sri Raghavendra Swamiji shows that he has absolutely no bias towards men, women, and anybody and everybody who's got scholarship has to be appreciated. So to that lies an answer to a question which many of us would have got. We call Jai Tirtha, Vijayendra Tirtha, Vadiraja Tirtha. Why do we say Raghavendra Tirtha? Why don't we say Raghavendra Tirtha? We say Raghavendra Swami. So here is the answer. So as the Raghavendra Swami then says that, the two of you are living the life of a sannyasi. Both of you are grihasthas, but you are so spiritually inclined that you are living the life of a sannyasi. So both of you. So as a mark of that recognition, I will take the Tirtha which is there in my name. His name is Raghavendra Tirtha. The Tirtha in my name will actually be attached to you. So Sri Bidarahalli Srinivasacharya's name today is Bidarahalli Sri Srinivasa Tirtharu, and Raghavendra Tirtha's name today is Raghavendra Swamiji. So those of you who are wondering, here lies the answer. It's also a typical question asked in several quiz on Madhwa philosophy, and now you know the answer. So this is the unique story of Sri Raghavendra Swamiji. As I said, such an illustrious life, such a great commentator, such a master of simplification is something that is unparalleled. We all have heard about his mahimas, but we should make at least one small attempt to read some of the works, because I can take a bet on this one. Nobody can simplify it like Sri Raghavendra Swamiji does. So with this, let us move to one last piece which we have to cover, which is the chronology of our gurus, and then we will stop. So this is a chronology starting from Sri Madhvacharya to Jai Tirtha and all the way up to Sri Raghavendra Tirtha. I will not go through these dates, except point out once more that the person who really stands out is Sri Vadiraja Tirtharu, with his super long 120-year lifetime. And it is important for all of us to know that there are other names by which they are also called in the Shastra Granthas. So Madhvacharya is called Bhashyakara because he wrote the Bhashya on Brahma Sutras. So if it is just mentioned Bhashyakara has said this, means it is understood that it is Sri Madhvacharya. Tika Kritpadaru or Tika Rayan is none other than Sri Jaitirtha. That is something that we know. If it is just said Vyakhyanakara, it is understood it is Sri Vyasaraja. Bhavabodhakararu, it means it is Sri Raghotama. And if it is Parimanacharya or Tippanyacharyaru, then it is Sri Raghavendra Swami. So these are some other names that are used in the Shastric works. Of course, their names will be clearly mentioned in the start, but as the texts flow, this is how they are referred to. So you should be aware of this because if you encounter these words, then automatically you can map it to whom the person is actually being referred to. So This is the fantastic, great lineage of Sri Madhvacharya. Now, suffice it to say that if you pick up any one of their works and say, I'm going to read all the works of Sri Jaitirtha, or all the works of Sri Vijendra Tirtha, or Vyasaraja, or Raghavendra Swamiji, or at least say, okay, let me read at least the top 5, top 10 granthas in my lifetime, it is indeed enough for us to come to get a very, very firm understanding of the Madhva Shastra. Now imagine all these granthas that they have written along with the Haridasa Sahitya gives us several options to understand and read the philosophy. Because until and unless we pick up the books, pick up the granthas and make an attempt to learn it from a guru, we will not be able to understand the depth of that philosophy. It will be merely a superficial understanding, and we will all go back thinking that somebody is a follower of Shankaracharya, somebody else is a follower of Buddhism, somebody else is a follower, like that, like everybody follows somebody, we have followed Madhvacharya. That should not be the reason we should be following the philosophy at all. The purpose of philosophy is to give us a definite purpose, give us that happiness, and give us that bliss state, take us to that state of bliss. My request to all of you would be that let us make an attempt to experience that bliss at least once in our lifetime by reading the Shastra Granthas. Now, how do we do that is the topic of our next session, which is going to happen on the 11th of April, which is about studying Sri Madhwa Philosophy. We will share the resources. There are a lot of questions people have about the guru, who is a guru, who is not a guru, how do we get to find our guru, who is the niyata guru, and so on. What is the mindset one needs to pursue Madhva Shastra? And lastly, as I said, what are the resources which are available that you can access easily so that you can start studying of Madhva Shastra if you have not done that already. And if you have started doing it, how do you accelerate? Today, I think we are blessed to have the internet by which sitting in any part of the world, we can access these resources. For all this, we just have to make up our mind. So with that, I will pause and take the questions that you have. So can you please share the links available where to get a good translation of Sri Vadaraj? Yes, I will definitely do that. I will share that with Sujit Avaru for him to access these resources. You'll have to give me a little bit of time. Maybe by tomorrow I will send all the links which are available. Plus the translations are also available today. Yukti Mallika is a great work of Sri Vadaraja. Similarly, Sri Rukmini Shivijaya. I would strongly suggest please start by reading Sri Rukmini Shivijaya. These hard copies of books are also available today written by Phalimar Mat. It has been translated by Sri Vyasankara Prabhanjanacharya and several other scholars. I talked about his travelogue, the Tirtha Prabandha. Simple book, very simple, beautiful poetry combined with the details of pilgrimage. So don't ever go to a pilgrimage without Tirtha Prabandha in your hand, because it gives a beautiful explanation about different pilgrimage places, the river that is associated with that particular pilgrimage spot, the presiding deity there, and so on. So I'll be more than happy to share those resources. Why were there such extreme distractors of Sri Vadaraja to try and poison him? So it all comes because of a couple of things. One is the jealousy that people have. Now, unfortunately, jealousy is a very typical human reaction when you can't solve a problem. That is why great leaders, when you can't solve them or can't fight them politically, are sitting candidates for assassination, right? If you go into the history of assassination of great political leaders, it is all done. It is one thing they have in common is the fact that nobody could battle them, in terms of politics. Similarly, the case with the spiritual gurus, when they could not counter them, and when they, out of sheer jealousy, they would try and get rid of that person by poisoning him. So he is not the only person. Sri Trivikrama Panditacharya, Sri Vijendra story, whose story we heard today, were also, it was attempted that they poison him. Shri Vyasaraja, in his life, also people tried to poison him. And the way they did that was always ask the person who was cooking for them, imagine their innermost circle, to actually, add poison to their food so that they can get killed. Of course, the divine powers that these people had, they not only saved themselves, but also today have given the wonderful shlokas that they composed at that point in time, to help them get rid of all the poisonous features that are actually entered their body. So those shlokas are available today to take away any negative energy around us. Those are recited by people even today. So they're very nice, very poetic, for you to learn as well and teach that to your children as well. Because once they recite that, they will definitely develop that immunity against all the evil forces which are there all around. So to your question, Sujit, it's very common that this has happened. It's out of extreme jealousy and not being able to take them on in the philosophical world. What is the story behind the belief that those who have fears should pray for Sri Madhwacharya, especially looking at his picture with the horse eating from his plate over his head? Yes, there is some truth to it, because clearly it is the story of Sri Hayagriva Deva Devaru blessing Sri Madhwacharya. So looking at that picture, yes, definitely one can overcome the fear, because being poisoned, of course, is the state of highest fear, and that helps us overcome. The very thought, think about these gurus, is enough to help us overcome all the fears. Today we live in a very protected society. We are all very blessed to be in a place where we are all safe. Nobody can attack us. There is law and order, there is police, there is the other departments, we have our parents, we have the building which gives us physical protection, so on and so forth. But imagine those days, Sri Vajraja Tirtha led a life where several people attacked him. His story is full of things where people attacked him, but he emerged unscathed, stronger than ever before. So yes, there is some truth to that story for sure. Um, yeah, so good if we can extend. Definitely, sir. I think we will continue this series. Shri Sujit and the organizers will make more announcements about it in the next session. What we plan to do is that the next session will be the last session in the weekly series that we have started, ending with how do we pursue the Madhva Shastra. But subsequent to that, every month we will pick up one particular theme or one particular guru and do a deep dive into their works. So definitely we will do that. Yeah, is Kannada prerequisite to read the works of these great saints? So Sujit, answer is yes, and the answer is no. The reason I say no is that some of the translations are available in other languages like English. But again, the reason I say yes is that the beauty of Sri Vadaraja's work, for example, is very, very difficult to reproduce in any other language. In fact, translations to Kannada itself is sometimes one feels that it has not been adequately done. That means the quality of the translation, no matter how well it is done, does not match the grandeur of the Sanskrit language. So Kannada is the next best option, I would say, because Sanskrit and Kannada have a lot of rules, lot of aspects of the grammar in common. So I would suggest that please make an attempt to learn Kannada. I know it's a tall ask for those who have not, but I think it is easy as well, because those of you who have studied Hindi as a language, or Marathi or other languages like Telugu, would find Kannada to be that much more simple. Now, other reason I also say that one should learn Kannada is the fact that very few books have been translated into English. Even if you accept inadequate, even if you accept a translation which appears inadequate, it is still not available. It is available for very few texts. Of course, in Madhvacharya for the youth, we have made an attempt to bring as much content as possible in English. That's why you see series of lectures covering different topics have been covered by Madhvacharya for the youth. Those of you who want to access it, please do access the YouTube link, YouTube channel that we have, which is Madhvacharya for the youth, and you will find a bunch of topics that we have covered addressing the basic topics of Madhva Shastra in English. But to an answer, is Kannada a prerequisite? I would still say yes. Please do that. It's a small price to pay in terms of to learn the great works of these great gurus. And I'm very sure that within 6 months to a year, you'll pick up fantastic speed in learning in learning and reading Kannada language, which is very 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 it'll really accelerate your speed. So yeah, are there any other questions that people would have? Thank you so much, Mohan Nagarajan, for attending these sessions. You have been a regular and been very interactive. So thank you for being at this session as well.
No, Sundar, we don't have any more questions. So.
Thank you, Murli. So with those words, thank all of you to have been a part of the session. I talked about the Vandyam Prasada Food Private Limited and Vandyam Foundation. This is an organization which is based in Bangalore, and it believes in providing sattvic food to the people who are needy. So those of you who are interested to know more about it and want to make a contribution, please do visit Mandyam.in. So every day sattvic food in the form of breakfast, lunch is served at the doorstep after being cooked in traditional style, Naivedyam being performed on the god, and that is delivered to doorsteps. Um, on any given day, more than 150 to 200 families get this food, of course, at a payment. But the plan is that any donation that Vandyam Foundation gets will be used to supply food on a daily basis to people who really need and who are not able to pay for that food. So more details are available on Vandyam.in. So thank you for this. And
Sundar, there is a question on the. So I'll just sorry. So
yes, so Anjanam Prasad has asked, are there any women scholars? Yes, there are women scholars who are there. We talked about Sri Raghavendra Swamiji himself. His mother was also known to be a great scholar. Unfortunately, her works, not all her works have been found, only very few have been found, and she is known to have been a scholar. Apart from that, there are other people as well, other women who have made contribution. Um, Bhiman Katteava is one of them who was quoted regularly. Her songs are sung in many places. In fact, shortly we will be coming up with a video on the women who have made a contribution to Madhvacharya, to contribution of Sri Madhwa philosophy. For further, Sri Madhvacharya's one of his contemporaries, Kalyani Devi, who is believed to be the sister of Trivikrama Panditacharya, also is one scholar. She has contributed in terms of many stotras on Sri Madhvacharya himself. So, like that, there are many women who have made contribution in a scholastic way. But the other thing also to observe is that their contribution in changing the lives of the people that they were associated with has been very, very big. So, for example, Sri Raghavendra Swamiji's mother was known as a Vidushi. So she would actually form a club, women's club, and every day she would do Pravachana in front of those women. Similarly, Raghavendra Swamiji's eldest sister also was somebody, her name is Venkama. She was someone whom her future husband came seeking for looking at her scholarship. So it is all very accurately documented. Like that, Shri Purandar Dasa's wife was a big inspiration for him. In fact, Shri Purandar Dasa's complete transformation from somebody who was a goldsmith and known to be a very self-centered person became a picture of Vairagya or detachment. Story completely revolves around the great qualities of his wife. So, like this, the contribution has been great. We want to take this as a bit of a research topic. It takes a little bit of a aggregation of all the content which is available about women contribution. And soon you will see a video coming from Madhvacharya for the youth. And if we all see the reasons and we all see the purpose, we can look at having a separate session on that topic. A very good question. Thank you so much. So if there are no further questions, I think I I have just shared this presentation with Sujit and Murli Avre. I request you to circulate it. I don't have any plans of going through this, but many people have asked me, when we say 64 Shashti Kala Vidyas, what are those Vidyas? What is that list? So there is a running list of what it's called in Sanskrit and what it translates to in English, that's available. So I just listed all of them. The presentation is available, and I request the organizers to circulate it, and people can actually see that and learn what are the different types of vidyas. Imagine 64 are there. So it's interesting to know which are those there. So we have a line in Sri Raghavendra's Stotra, Sarva Vidya Pravinonyo Raghavendranna Vidyate. What is that Sarva Vidya? Which are those Vidyas is something that might be of interest to you. So I've listed it there. Till Sri Raghavendra Swamiji, all the pontiffs before him had, all of them had the ability, all the 64 uh, vidya or the forms of education is something that they always had. So this is a testimony to that. So I just listed it for your reference. So thank you so much. I wish you all a great rest of the Sunday, and we will go to. We all look forward to the next session, which is going to be on how do we study Madhva Shastra, because by now we have learned quite a bit about the Madhvacharya's life, his philosophy, tenets, his Shishya Parampara, all the granthas that they have published. But now, what's in it for me? If this is so great, how do I pursue? That's the topic for the next session. Till then, have a great week ahead of you. Thank you so much. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.